But I just want to welcome everyone. I'm Mark Ang. I'm the founder and president of AIB. And we exist here to bring Asian businesses together and to uplift Asian businesses in the community through a fellowship engaged in meaningful action. So we do charity work. We encourage people to get politically involved. Part of this, what we have today, is part of our mission to bring pro-business, pro-family candidates into one forum and let you, the public, decide which candidate most represents you. And when you go into that voting booth, which is a real problem in this community, we actually don't vote. So we need to start getting involved in our engaged civically with our civics and to go out there and exercise our right to vote. It affects the business community. As you know, we've had our business taxes are so punitive to our business owners, and we have these gas taxes, and we have all these things that are affecting minimum wage increasing. All of these things, if we don't exercise our voice as a business community to affect legislation, we're in a bad place. So I encourage everyone, June 5th is our primary. Please make sure to go out and vote and to really be thoughtful about the candidates that you end up supporting, and to encourage other people in the community to do the same. I wanted to encourage everyone also to follow our social media. We do a lot of stuff on Facebook and let you guys know of events that are coming up, charitable opportunities. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but go on Facebook, facebook.com/Asian Industry B2B, B2B, and same on Instagram, and on Twitter, it's Asian AIB2B. Last month, we had a great mixer. We did zero advertising for that mixer, and we still got close to 100 people at the Pasadena Service Federal Credit Union. So I think we have Andy Tien and Rhonda Newboard, our partners at PSFCU. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for supporting our organization and allowing us to host a wonderful event where we got to hear Andy's story about starting a bank branch in a high school. So encouraging financial literacy in the youth. So thank you so much. You walked the walk of what we stand for. And they were so gracious and gave us all this great food, and it was really an awesome time. We were so happy, and we also had our good friend, former Assemblywoman Ling Chang, who spoke on STEM and other issues involving education. So thank you everyone for being there. And Patrick Person and Alfonso Anaya, who I want to give a shout out to. They have a great organization called Kids That Code, encouraging young people to get into computer programming and basically becoming our future programmers and future app developers. So thank you for all that you do. I want to give a shout out to my leadership. We got Michael Liu here, my very good friend and thought partner. We also have Carmela Gilberto. Carmela, she's back there in the blue. She helped me found this organization, and we love her so much. She does so much in the community. And Carmela, you have a luau coming up, right?
Yes, inviting everybody June 16th. We have a luau hosted by the Filipino American Chamber of Commerce. So more networking. Come see me.
And good food, right?
Yes.
Great.
Cancer.
Thank you, Carmela. Thank you for all that you do. And right there with the camera right there is my good friend Chini, who is our educational lead, and he is such a great partner, and we're doing so many cool things that we're going to start unveiling over the next few months. He's got a fun little board game, which is a better version of Monopoly or the game of life that engages people to become more thoughtful about their budgeting process. So I can't wait to unveil that in the next few months. We also have Reggie Mares. Reggie, where are you? She's right there waving. We love Reggie. She herself has built many great organizations in the community, and she's helping us build AIB, and we just love her so much. Ann Tao is not available today. He is in, I think he's in New York or something. So He is out of town. And we also have Lani Indrawati. Ani is there in the blue. She does all our video. She helps set this up because I'm a retard when it comes to, like video, audio stuff. So thank you, Lani, for all that you do. And I also want to thank the South Coast AQMD, obviously, for allowing us to congregate in this space today. So thank you so much. And without further ado, I really want to introduce our 3 great candidates. We are so blessed in the 39th district to have a choice. And that's what the primaries are about. It's about a choice. And that's what democracy is about. Because anyone can run. A party, whether it's the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, should not tell anyone, hey, you should get out of the race. This is a democracy, and this is democracy in full display today. So I'm very excited to welcome, first of all, and please take a seat wherever you want. And by your seat choice will determine your order, so I'm not going to tell you what that order is, but sit wherever you want. Let's start with former Assemblywoman Young Kim, who is, she was the first ever Korean American Republican woman elected to serve in the state assembly, reflecting the changing dynamics of the district. Young also protected victims of domestic violence with her bill AIB2B that passed the Assembly with bipartisan support. And Kim has also founded and continues to serve on the board of directors for various local nonprofits, bringing the unique voice of Asians to the community. So we welcome Young Kim. And next I want to welcome, actually, he's a member of this of AQMD, Shawn Nelson, who is our current OC supervisor, and he is someone that I just really appreciate his ability to effectively articulate conservative positions, and a great speaker, great supervisor. He has prioritized critical issues like reducing the unfunded pension liability, improving infrastructure in Orange County, and solving the homelessness problem. He is also the only current office holder in this race with endorsements including from Andrew Doe and Philip Chen. So welcome our supervisor, Shawn Nelson. And last but not least, I want to introduce our former State Senate Minority Leader, Bob Huff. Bob Huff has authored legislation to promote Lunar New Year and other Asian cultural heritage celebrations in the Asian American communities. He also led the way in demanding for a formal apology, not just an expression of regret, but a formal apology to the Chinese American community for the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. He is a leader in Southern California education, transportation, and small business issues, winning him top ratings by taxpayers. So welcome, Bob. Now I'm going to kind of turn this over to Michael. Michael, where are you at? Where's my... There he is. So we're going to stand on opposite sides. We may stand, we may sit. And also, Crystal is our timer, and which I'm going to bring up some of the debate rules right now. First of all, no video or audio recording, please. If you have any video and we catch you, you will be escorted out. So that is first and foremost. And please turn down your cell phones to vibrate or silent. That would be very helpful to us, and or completely off even. Okay, questions were fielded to us beforehand and integrated into this debate. So as you guys may know, we had a period of time in the beginning of a week or two ago where we sent out emails and said you can email questions. So we've integrated a lot of those questions we've received into the debate. If time permits, we will allow people to ask questions, but please actually write the questions down on a note card and give it over to Christine Callender over there, and we will screen those questions, and then we'll ask the audience, with the candidates, those questions in the end. Please hold your applause. No hooting, no hollering. It helps the program go quicker when we're not dealing with that. Candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements, and they also have 1 minute to answer the other topics. You will be given a 30-second warning to wrap up, and that is going to be a yellow sign. So when you see the yellow from Crystal, that's basically an indication that you have 30 seconds left. And a red sign will be put up when your time is completely up. Okay? There will also be an optional time to speak we have 5 sections in this. After 30 seconds, you can choose to take 30 seconds to rebut any of the other candidates' statements after all 3 have answered. So you may choose to exercise that or not exercise that. At the moderator's discretion, extra time may be given if appropriate. So candidates, please stay on topic and keep your answers brief and succinct. We are going to cover a lot of ground today. And I'm going to give it over to Michael now, and he's going to start off.
Okay, so first of all, is this mic working?
You got to turn it on.
Thank you for attending the 39th Congressional District today. This is one of the most hotly contested.
You can use mine if needed.
Check.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
So
The 39th Congressional District
race is one of the most hotly contested races. Hello, check.
You know what? I'm going to move this along. Okay, I would like to.
Okay, I would like to just move this along, and let's have our first candidate, and that will be Young Kim. Please give us your 2-minute introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, AIB2B. I want to thank the organizer, AIB2B, for hosting this candidate forum for all 3 of us. So it's a pleasure and honor to be on the same stage with my colleagues here, Shawn and Senator Bob Huff. Good to be here. And everyone knows, probably over the last course of 2 decades or so, we have met in the community as I had the opportunity to serve this very district when I worked alongside Congressman Ed Royce as his key liaison to the communities of the 39th Congressional District. So as an immigrant, for me to be given that opportunity to serve the public the way I did, it is truly an American dream. I am an Asian American, and my family came here, just like most of us I see in this room, to pursue the opportunity that America provides, to succeed on our own through hard work and determination. And that's what my family did, because America is a great nation, because we're so diverse. It allows an opportunity for someone like me as an Asian American, that today I get to run for United States Congress for the very position that I worked alongside. And then I had the opportunity to go and represent you in the California State Assembly. When I was elected, I was the first Asian American from Orange County and Southern California to serve. And to be the first Asian American, Korean American Republican woman, I made history. Because we haven't had a voice up in Sacramento to be the fiscally responsible conservative voice. And now, I am very proud of the fact that I was able to provide all that opportunity, and through my election and my service, we have encouraged and inspired a lot of the younger generation Asian Americans to look up to someone like me as a mentor to pursue that someday their dream may be able to come true. So I've had the experience of living and working and serving the public. If I'm given the opportunity, I would like to utilize all of the experience that I've had to serve you and go to Washington, D.C. to be your voice, to be the fiscally conservative representative that you have come to expect. When you knew Congressman Ed Royce, I will be that voice. So I want to thank you so much, and I look forward to having more conversation on many different issues. Thank you.
If you could kindly turn off your phone when you're not microphone. And Shawn Nelson.
All
right, well, good evening. I am Shawn Nelson. I am a county supervisor in Orange County. This district and my supervisorial district is a place I've lived my entire life. I married a girl from Fullerton as well, so that's also her experience. And I have 3 wonderful children that we're raising that were all born in this district as well. So to say this is my home, not only have I never moved to run for office, I wouldn't. And that shouldn't be unique, except for the fact, on the other side, every major candidate does not live in the district. To me, that's ridiculous and really unfortunate. But I can assure you that 120 days ago, like all of us, this came as a large surprise. Ed Royce served this district for most of my adult life. I was proud to be a volunteer on his first campaign and a close friend. But when Ed stepped down, like a lot of things in life, the decision was an instantaneous. You're either in or you're out, whether you know it or not, because the coronations happen very quickly in these congressional races. I stepped up pure and simple because I believe I can win this seat. If you don't know, this is likely to be, if not the most contested seat in the country, certainly one of the top 3. It will put all of your candidates, whoever makes it to the finals, on the largest stage in the United States. Everyone from the Koch brothers to George Soros and everything in between. So your elected representative that goes beyond June has to be more than a friendly face or someone you're familiar with. The person that you and we send from this community has to be someone that can hold their own on any stage and articulate not just their own, but your views on behalf of almost 1 million people that live in this district. This district is incredibly diverse, as you know. The mere fact that we have a few hundred people sitting in this room for an Asian business organization alone is proof positive. There is no majority ethnicity in this district. Whoever our candidate is going to be has got to bring something to everybody. And in my last election, I won with 84% of the vote because I did exactly that. I look forward to your vote in June and look forward to this evening.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mark, and your team for putting on this event where we can come and talk about ourselves. And it's a great country that we live in where we can support those that we believe in to help represent us. But, I'm an immigrant from Imperial Valley. Those of you that have been to Imperial Valley might know it seems like a boring country. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. But it is a southern, eastern part. If you go to Glamis Dunes, you've gone too far east. But a lot of people go down there up here on the weekends. But I grew up on a farm. First 10 years on a farm, then in the thriving metropolis of Imperial, 3007. But we learned the value of hard work at an early age and community, a sense of community. And for us, the community evolved around our family. I was the youngest of 6 kids. It evolved around church. We were there whenever the doors were open. It evolved giving back to the community. My dad was on the school board at one point. He was in the Farm Bureau. We were involved in the community. Now, my wife doesn't like me to say that my dad was a farmer unless I also say he was a teacher. Both my parents were teachers, and somehow farmers have a negative connotation. But we moved to Diamond Bar in 1983, and I liked Diamond Bar because it was freeway close to my business clients in Orange County, LA County, San Bernardino. And lo and behold, I was pleased to serve later on in the State Assembly and Senate for those same reasons, that it was clustered around. And if you're in the corner regions of this area, you know one thing for sure. We get left out of any transportation funding formula. And so while I was elected to the City Council, Diamond Bar, here in 1995, I served in regional government working on transportation issues. When I went to Sacramento, I asked to be Vice Chair of Transportation. Was fortunate enough to be chosen for that, hoping I could make a difference, only to find out Transportation Committee was mostly dealing with DMV issues and not funding. That's all about the budget when you want to get funding for transportation. But I was able to work and leverage that anyway to work with congressional delegation, with state bonds and other things to help get more money down for this region. So I met new friends here tonight, longtime friends, and hope to have some even newer friends as you get to know me, and look forward to this time talking. Thank you very much.
Check. Hey, Mike, is your mic working?
Can everyone hear me from the back? Yes? Okay. We'll try our best. Let's start with a general question. What do you think the issues are facing the Asian American community?
No.
We can start with.
Same order.
Sure.
Sure. As an Asian American, I don't just think. I know why we all came to America. To capitalize on the opportunities that America provided to us. To that end, my parents brought me over here. I'm the youngest of 7 children. They wanted to provide the best quality education and best opportunities that they would not otherwise provide to me when we stayed in South Korea. To that end, and to this day, as I'm raising my own 4 children and living the American dream, education, economy, jobs, trade, these are all important issues, not just for the district, but for Asian Americans and throughout the nation. On education front, I worked really hard to stop SCA 5, and I also introduced a bill in the State Assembly to call upon Harvard to end its unfair admissions practices. I also served in the Assembly and fought to make sure that the STEM-related education is protected and we provide more opportunities to high school students to be able to take classes in community colleges and 4-year classes early on so they get a head start on getting the college classes and they'll be ready for other courses. These are all important issues, and we need to make sure that there are more STEM-related classes available in classes and also provide funding for schools that provide STEM-related issues. On the economy, we need to provide relief for small businesses by cutting unnecessary regulations and providing lower taxes. And so I want to work on those things, but on the trade front, because this district and Southern California, we rely on so much on trade, we need to make sure that, time check, okay. So I support making sure I'm pro-trade person and pro-education and pro-economy growth. So I will continue to work on those issues because these are important for our Asian American community. Thank you.
Thank you, Shawn.
All right, well, like a lot of things in life, I hope and I see the American experiment is not owned by any ethnicity, and sort of you have immigrants groups that come here, and the unique thing about America is anybody can be an American. The middle class issues facing the Asian American community are really not much different than facing any middle class community. I will say, having talked to a lot of people knowing this was coming, and just wanted to know, is there something I'm missing? There's a real tragedy in the American education system, and it's this. I spent last week, I went and addressed a group of students at a tutoring center. And one of the things that I found is this fear that Asian American students, and they were mostly Korean, were mentioning that they felt it was unlikely they would be given the same shake at the highest level institutions because they felt, and it's based on real experience, that they would be required to jump over a higher bar in order to gain admission at the best universities in this country. That is not right. This country stands for achievement, and they're being instilled that if they work hard, they'll get an opportunity to earn their place. And what they're hearing is they have to work harder to earn the same place as their classmates, and that is wrong.
Thank you.
Crystal, can I ask you to stand up when my time is up? Because it's hard to see the red when we're busy talking. Well, thank you. You know, I think underlying is every issue that we face is what the Asian community faces, but they have a higher overlay on top of that. Most of the Asians come here as immigrants. And as immigrants, they got to get established in a totally new place. So economically, they have to get themselves established. They're working hard, just hoping people won't hurt them. And they're trying to provide for their families. They want to make sure they got the top education for their kids, the top educational opportunities. And I see that the immigrant community from Asia is so hardworking all the time. They usually have both people working in the family. So those are top issues. But also, it's security. You know, we find that criminals tend to target Asian community. Whether they follow them home because they believe they have valuables, we need to do things to help them understand that how to keep from being targeted that way. But certainly it's providing for the family economically, providing for their kids educationally, providing for their security. And they want to do this just like any of us to have that American dream. And they also want to have their freedoms protected, because that's usually, it was economic opportunity and freedoms that brought them here, that brought you here, And that's what you want to see passed on to your children as well.
Thank you, Bob. So, those were great answers. How would you solve those issues? And we can change direction right now, perhaps, if we'd like.
I
I'm
think we
watching
decided
Crystal
to
now,
make
so I
our own
understand.
rules. The next question will be answered by Shawn first, and then we'll go, and then the third one by the senator. We made our own.
That sounds good.
I'll follow whatever you tell me.
When yes.
Yeah, you want some rebuttal on some of that, or?
Well, how would you solve these issues?
Oh, okay.
Before the rebuttal session, so.
Yeah, no, so my discussion was very brief, obviously, so you ran out of time, but I think one of the important things, every major institution has federal funding for research. And remember, this is a federal office. What the United States government can do is just lay down the law, literally, that if a university is going to choose to raise the bar for specific ethnicities solely to limit their population percentage at a major university, the federal government should restrict their funding for federal research dollars. It's very simple. If you cannot treat people fairly, then the government should not be funding you. And that would be a common sense solution.
Okay, thank you, Shawn, for your concise, great answer. Bob?
I like to stand, I can talk better when I'm standing. So I think when it comes to the things that I articulated, protecting our freedoms, it's going to take somebody just to mind that we don't erode those, and those tend to happen. Educationally, it's not what I will do. I will continue what I've been doing. And those of you know I've been up in Sacramento fighting for educational system, helping create choice within the school system, because our public funded schools tend to trap people in the district of their zip code rather than what's best for the family. So I've gotten more money for public charter schools. I've carried that legislation, district of choice. I fought for SCA 5 when the Democrats wanted to, and I realize Democrats here, sorry, but they wanted to reintroduce government-sponsored discrimination against how you get into schools. So those are things that I've been fighting and I'll continue to fight. As far as law enforcement and security, whether it's a government issue or a federal issue or not, I believe when you're a representative, you represent people, you plug them into whatever level is necessary. And that would mean working with local law enforcement to have outreach into the community, build that community base so that people feel comfort around policemen and can talk and learn the things they need to do to protect themselves.
So this question was about the issues facing Asian American community, and I talked about education as being number one priority for all of us. So I talked about making sure that the students get into colleges of their choice. It has to be based on merits, which is why I fought for that issue. But public education is number one priority, if not the most important one, of our government. So when we do provide government funding for education, we need to make sure there is a transparency and accountability. So I will continue to work on that issue. But we also talked about growing the economy and making sure our regional economy is strong. In order to do that, since California is gateway to Pacific Rim, we need to ensure that we engage our Asian nations to do trade and do it in an open and fair system. And I will support any effort to do that, like I did when I was working in a congressional office, helping to pass the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, which we are reaping the benefits right now, and I will continue to work on those similar issues to promote free trade.
Okay, now we have an opportunity for counterpoints. Would anyone like to take a minute or 30 seconds to rebut, or can we move on to the next? Okay, let's move on to philanthropy. I'll take over this one because it's my baby here. AIB stands for charity and community. What have been your efforts in the community in a nutshell? And let's mix it up. Let's start with Bob.
Well, I told you how life revolved around the church when I was down in Imperial Valley. But truly, up here until I got into political life, that was the same way. And charity may begin at home. I put my time in at church because they were dealing with these issues and helping the homeless and helping people that had been displaced, people that were needing helping hand, and that's where I spent most of my time until I got an elected office. And then I started spreading it out a little bit differently. And when you're an elected official, you have the ability to lend your name to an organization, to attend organizations, to help them out, help them draw people. So, you know, I was on the Habitat for Humanity board, member of Rotary, which is a service club. Have been involved in many different Asian organizations to help attract and help other people. The Purist comes to mind, which is about gathering toys and food to help the needy as well. And it's always a joy to give those things out that have been integrated fully in both private life and then public life and giving back to the community, and certainly will continue to do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Shawn?
Well, I think one of the traps is that when people run for elected office, they think that their participation by showing up as an elected official actually counts as service, and that's not true. I have been active in my community, this district, my entire life, but you know, the hard work is actually showing up and doing something. I ran a very aggressive litigation firm, and I was a head trial lawyer. I had no time to do much of anything in the community except I decided to coach youth football. Now, it wasn't an Asian youth football league, but more than half of my players were Chinese or Korean Americans. I ended up coaching basketball in the off season. I never even played organized basketball. If you have children involved in that, understand one thing: unless your kid's in figure skating or horse jumping, there is no sport that takes more time than football. And my wife and I also raised a child that wasn't our own. Now, if you want to talk about something that takes an incredible amount of time and commitment, I raised a young minority man because he was on my football team. He had nothing. That became my service work. He's in college today, and he just sent his report card. He has straight A's.
Thank you. Young?
So, before I started working for Ed Royce, I was involved with a nonprofit organization called Korean American Coalition. It's an organization that my husband founded, and he's sitting right here. I'm very proud of him. It's a nonprofit organization that helps to educate our Korean American community to be involved in the political process through the educational leadership training, to advocate the interests on behalf of our community. That led me to work closely with the mainstream by serving as a bridge between our Korean-speaking community to the mainstream English-speaking community. So I was able to work on a lot of the issues that really empowered our younger generation to be involved in the mainstream process. Over the years, as my service in the community continued, I am now very proud to say I serve on the board of directors for Orange County GRIP. It stands for Gang Reduction Intervention Program, and we work with potentially at-risk youth students so that we can keep them away from potentially being in the environment to participate in gangs. Truancy is one of the key things that we work on. I'm very proud of the fact that over the years, I've been working on these really nonprofit organizations to mentor and inspire younger generations to be the next generation of leaders by showing them by example and doing a lot of the community activities and providing the services that they need to get involved. And that's what AIB2B does, and I congratulate you for that.
Thank you, Young. And there's a specific problem in our Asian community, which is one of underreporting mental illness. A lot of times there's domestic violence, there's also substance abuse, gambling addictions in our community that do not get addressed. How do you address this? And if you were to become our next congressperson, how would you address this? And let's start with Shawn.
Well, thank you, and I have to commend Bob. I'd be more polite to stand, so I apologize for sitting. But I think the Asian community is not unique in reporting mental illness issues. I mean, that's endemic throughout our society. I think it's also common for people that have served in the military. Part of it is just to destigmatize the entire issue of mental illness. If you don't know, one of the things that the counties do is mental health services are provided at county level. And so I just happen to have a lot of engagement with that lately. Homelessness is a big issue, and mental illness is closely tied. But I think the key to getting any community engaged is to reach out through community leaders and just open dialogue, whether it's engagement through church organizations, or just community leaders and mental health professionals, and have an open dialogue, have stories run in the press, whether it's radio, television, but just open a more common communication that mental health is something that can be dealt with without a stigma. And whether you're Asian American or any ethnicity, that's a problem everywhere in our society right now. It's a hot topic. And sometimes the fact that something is hot helps bring that to the surface and invites people to start dealing with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Young?
Okay. I agree. We need to destigmatize this mental health issues. It is okay that you or your loved ones are suffering with this issue. It is okay to talk about it. When you talk about it and people know about it, we can bring help that they need. So education is key to this one. We need to educate people to identify the symptoms of people dealing with mental issues. But also one of the things that we need to do is make sure that the hospitals have enough funding to provide and allocate number of beds in their hospitals to accommodate the mental health patients. So I think all of those things are needed, and we need to work together as a community, showing them that there is help. You can talk about it. It is okay. Help is on the way. Thank you.
Don?
Mental illness is a problem throughout society. And whether Asians have a higher percentage or don't talk about it as much, I don't know. But data can certainly dictate that. But I do know there's resources. We have the so-called millionaire's tax that raises 1% of income on those that are earning over $1 million. They call it the millionaire's tax. That goes to mental health. And it's a big pot of money. And that money can be used, and it should be used to access and help diagnose what the specific problems are, and then to destigmatize, yes, but also help people know that it's very common. But we have highly functioning people that have mental illness, and if they keep it under control, it's diagnosed early. You think of Vincent van Gogh, he was a great artist. He was mentally unstable. Sir Isaac Newton, he had mental illness as well. There's so many others in history that you could cite. But we have the opportunity to catch it, to diagnose it early. We need to destigmatize it, and then we can all live a little bit better.
Do any of the candidates want to take an opportunity to counterpoint? Okay, let's move on to the next section. Michael?
Yeah, our next section is political engagement. AIB, that's Asian Industry Business, stands for getting more Asians involved in the political process and engaging them on issues. With such a low propensity for Asians to vote, what have you done to inspire Asian Americans to get involved? And we'll start with the first person who wants to.
Make a choice, Michael.
I want to. While I've been in elected office, I have had a lot of internships for Asian kids. I worked specifically with a PAPA. They had a high quality stream coming through my assembly and then my Senate office, but also other kids from the high school or community that came in, to try to just give them a little taste of what this is going on. Because when they work with a politician, they're more likely to get pulled into the political process and pay attention. Certainly I highlighted issues, as was articulated earlier, that are important to the Asian community, whether that be SCA 5, making merit-based decisions on school admissions rather than the government figuring out who's overrepresented or underrepresented. That was important. AB 1726, when they were trying to disaggregate the data, that was seen as a back door to affirmative action. So I have represented these different things, but I think another very important thing is my wife and I helped form a couple of political action committees to help get them engaged as well, building coalitions for excellence. And we've also set up how do you vote, how you register, how you do this, training, because that's what's necessary to get pulled in.
Thank you, Bob. We can go next with Shawn.
Sure. So, one of the things that is incumbent upon people in elected office, you have to encourage people to run. I mean, part of getting, I think, people involved is to look out and see people they relate to that are running. I have recruited candidates to run. I didn't know Andy was on your board, but he told me he was from Fullerton and where he lived. And first thing I said is, you know, you've been to 2 events that I've seen you at in the last couple of months. You got to think about running for city council. And he said, well, maybe I'll think about it. You know, when I first ran for office, you know, it was a priority to have people on my staff that reflected not only the district, but could help me understand how do you penetrate some of these communities that might be a little more insular because either I don't speak their language or because they're just not as familiar with me. And I have had an entire array of people that have been really fantastic. Servants on my staff, one of them, Sam Hahn, is hyper-political at this point. He's made it a career, and I would say it's extremely effective, and it's just all about engagement and reaching out. Thank you.
Thank you, Shawn. Yeah?
Well, one of the best ways to engage the Asian American community and really turn out the voting bloc that is really should be engaged, and as I think our friend Mark mentioned, even though we are registered to vote, that typically we are known as the voting bloc that doesn't come out. Not until they see one of their own from the community running for office. So for the last 2 decades or so, my involvement, not only as a staff, but working as a community leader, working on organizations like CAUSE, KAC, working with APAPA. These are the ways that we can engage the Asian Americans to see that Asian American candidate is out there running. This particular case, 39 congressional district, has very experienced someone who's worked in the district for over 2 decades, someone who didn't just jump out of the race, jump out of somewhere and decided to run. I have dedicated my time and proven my commitment to the community. When they see a candidate like me, they get engaged, they get excited. I'm engaging them. This is one of the ways that we can engage the Asian Americans to come out and vote in voting blocks that is engaged and that can make a difference. And I also want to give a shout out again for AIB2B, APAPA, CAUSE, KAC, for making sure that our Asian American voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to try to move this along, so I appreciate the candidates attempting to stay within the time limits. Let's continue to try to program.
Stand when you have the red thing.
Yes,
She's got a
please.
red shirt, and it's,
Okay.
some of us are looking at the crowd. It's just, you think it's obvious, but it's not.
Okay, so the second question
Jump up and down.
Yeah, I have something.
Just sit right there, that's good.
Good suggestion. So the second question in our political engagement section is specifically when in Congress and in DC most of the time, what will you do to stay connected to the Asian community and to listen to our needs?
We can start with Young Kim.
Because I'm standing up. I'll do what I've been exactly doing the last 2+ decades. I am engaged. I'm in the community. I'm out and about everywhere. I have established and coordinated the Asian American Pacific Congressional Advisory Council to engage the community from all different groups to serve on the advisory board, to give input to the congressional process. When I'm elected, I continue to do the same thing. We have to stay engaged in the district where East Tangier Valley, right here where we are, represent 30% of the district. We have an office in Rowland Heights when I first began in this 39th district when Ed Royce was elected. He was the only member of Congress that I know who had a district office right here. I would love to continue that so we can engage the East Tangier Valley folks in the congressional process, and I'd love to continue that work. Thank you.
Let's go with Shawn.
Yeah, so like any community, I think if you're going to engage the faith community or the business community, the key is to find people that you can count on, people that you have confidence in, that will be honest with you, that you can listen to, but that will also listen to you. And you know, when you come back, the unique thing about being in DC and living on the West Coast is our time's going to be limited. It takes a very significant toll on the members flying back and forth. We're lucky that we have LAX, but The key to staying involved is to have community leaders that you can engage, that are familiar with what's going on, and not to stick with the same people all the time, because then you just get a limited view. But that's the only way any leader can really get a sense of what's going on in their community and their business, is you have to find key representatives that have the pulse, whether it's in the faith community, in the education community, business, etc. And it's part of just listening and trying to then make policy that helps people based on the feedback that you get. Thank you.
Thank you. So as I recall the question, it was, since we're back in DC most of the time when elected, how will we stay connected to the Asian community out here? I'm going to place a call daily to my wife, Mamie, okay? And I say that sort of humorously, but that's true. We're a partner, full partner in this, and she is out and about the community all the time. She's on the WeChat platform all the time, learning the issues, knowing what it is. When we had the after-school problem getting shut down, it was somebody calling Mamie. They didn't speak English that well, but they felt comfortable talking to her. By the way, I could never find anybody to replace Mamie. I had Asian staff, but she complains that she was never paid. But nevertheless, she is a very good liaison within the community. But above and beyond that, I will have paid Asian staff. I will continue to go to events of the district to stay connected, to be their voice in Washington, D.C., but also to have ears in the community to learn what the issues are so we deal with it properly. It's a U.S. representative. That's what this office is. I will represent all aspects of the community, even though that's a very diverse and challenging job at times with the diversity of the district.
Thank you, Bob. Now here's the final question for the political engagement section, and we fielded a question from the community. So Patricia, a Republican from Diamond Bar, asks, many people, especially Asians, are tired of negative campaigning. How do you feel about your resources going to building a positive message about yourself without tearing others down, especially those in your own political party? Is negative campaigning necessary? We'll start with Bob.
Well, evidently it's necessary. I've been whacked by somebody up here. I've been whacked by the Democrat Party, so I guess somebody's concerned about my candidacy. I think it's very important to spend your resources to tell people what you've done, what you can do, what you will do, because if you don't define yourself, others define you. And I think in my case, I have a record. By the way, I was doing the math on it, and it's hard to estimate, but I probably cast votes on at least 80,000 votes or so over my years of being on the city council, being up in Sacramento. So out of all those, I got a pretty good record. I'm 100% rated by the Chamber of Commerce, 100% rated by California Taxpayers Association, 100% rated by the National Federation of Independent Business, A rating by Howard Jarvis. You don't get those by being a slug. Now, if you listen to my opponents, they'll say I'm a horrible tax and spend guy and everything else, but I'll go back to the independent guys, not the ones that are have an axe to grind on it, and that's where I put my trust. Were there some bad votes among 80,000? I'm sure there probably were, but anyway, I think you have to spend time and money and remember the 11th commandment of Reagan.
Thank you, Bob. We'll go with Shawn next.
Well, we are in a political campaign, and I think anybody that's running a campaign, look, negative campaigning sucks, right? The ideal scenario is you never deal with it from any angle. I've had the incoming, and I've been carpet bombed, and unfortunately I've had to deal with it. But a campaign is a calculus of not just, hey, I'm a good guy, but if you understand the art and the science of campaigning, you cannot just run in a field of 17 and say the same thing as your candidates and make any traction. You've got to express who you are, and if there are people that are not making it clear who they are, then the assistance either gets put in, or you get a bunch of divided votes, and there is a real possibility in this race that you could have the difference between the leader and the fifth place person at 2%. There's 17 candidates. You got a lot of people running in the same lane. The Democrats have taken a fortune out to hit some of us, but this is the warm-up show, folks. After June, get ready, because whoever's on the stage, it's going to be showtime.
Thank you, Shawn. Yeah.
Well, just like you, I'm tired of negative campaigning. I've said it from the very beginning. especially in the primary, when there are 7 of us on the Republican side, there is no need to go negative. It's bad enough that we are running with a very limited resources. I'm staying positive, and I'm not going to go negative on any of my Republican colleagues in the primary. There is not necessary. My positive message is working. Look, I'm in the lead. The public polls show that I'm in the lead. I have a track record of being fiscally responsible, working hard to cut taxes. The Orange County Register said Young Kim is the best vote, being fiscally responsible. I don't need to go negative, especially against one of my own colleagues on the Republican side. I am going to continue on this route and be positive. I have limited resources to spend to get my message to you guys. So, my positive message is working, and I'll continue to stay on that road. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Young. Does anyone want to counterpoint any of what's happened in this section? Otherwise, we can move on. Let's move.
Oh, Shawn?
Oh. Our next section is foreign policy, environment, and immigration. Question 1, do you support the president's trade tariffs? And let's start with Shawn.
I support the president's acknowledgement that when people all say, well, hey, I want fair trade, and the criticism coming back is, well, what are you going to do if you start a trade war? Well, the real question also has to be asked, what happens if you don't do anything? Because everybody wants free trade. I think that's a unanimous poll. But guess what? We have nation after nation on the face of this globe that we don't get fair reciprocity with. So if you are in a classroom environment or any other environment, if the odds are stacked against you and it's inappropriate to make any waves ever, what do you think your opponents are going to do? They're going to keep taking advantage. So I have a habit of listening to questions and answering them. I support the president negotiating for the United States because that's his job. And I think countless Democrat and Republican presidents before him have all too conveniently failed to look out for people in middle America. And both Trump and Bernie figured that out last time around. One going completely the wrong direction. But I can assure you, this country feels it, and they desperately need leadership. And I'm thankful that this president is stepping forward and saying something that's needed to be said for a long time.
Amen.
Thank you, Shawn. Young, would you like to go next?
Sure.
Do I support President's trade tariffs? Well, that's the specific question, and to that question, I say I do not. The tariffs have an unintended consequences of starting the trade war, which we talked about, and it did. And I think he did that with dealing with China's unfair practices of dealing with the United States. So that was what I believe why he did that. Then you know what? He needed to do that bilaterally, not dragging all the different trade nations into this thing, because that tariff has more consequences of hurting our California and our local economy. So I was against that. But you know, our economy right here rely heavily on trade, which is why I keep saying I will be supportive of open and fair trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Young. Well, Huff.
We had a very articulate defense of President Trump's policy, but the truth is, I'm running to be a U.S. representative of the 39th district, which happens to be in California. So while the tariffs might be good for Iowa or Indiana or somewhere, I want to know whether it's good for California. And as I look at it, I say that it's not, because we are a state built upon trade. We're the 5th largest economy now in the world. Whether it's Silicon Valley, who designs stuff here but builds it elsewhere, whether it's our agriculture, we're the #1 ag state in the nation, we grow it here and we send it elsewhere. We have a very diverse economy, but it is built upon trade. So if we follow this path, we can be cutting ourselves off at the throat. And so that's something that, you know, I would hope to have a voice with the president and say, you know, take care of these other guys, but don't do it at our expense. And so I think that is a real problem. We're also the gateway to America. We have a lot of jobs based on Pacific Rim commerce that's goods movement, goods storage, all those things. So what comes in through this largest port in the nation, LA Long Beach Harbor, is about half of it's going elsewhere. So that was a bad deal for us.
Thank you, Bob. You would like to say something, Sean?
Yeah, it just be maybe a little rebuttal.
Sure.
So,
Yes.
Go ahead.
yeah, so listen, this is important. California, what do you think stops this state from being a smoldering crater economically? If we didn't have Silicon Valley, this place would be in even worse shape than it is, and we lead the nation in poverty, right, and homelessness. We didn't always, and we should never. But the bottom line is, if we don't look out for the intellectual property of the Silicon Valley, when they go to China and they want to make things, governments require that they share their intellectual property. That is not fair. And it is very short-sighted to think that for today and today alone, I'm going to save something long-term, starting with Clinton giving Chinese secrets of L'Oreal Corporation, our missile technology. This is a disaster, and it's done nothing but hurt American workers of every stripe. We have to protect the intellectual property that belongs to Americans, and that's what this is all about, nothing more. And the ag sectors could suffer short term, and we've got to come up with buffer solutions for that, because it'd be a natural retaliation. But long term, you cannot let people steal your intellectual property. Once they steal it, they're never giving it back. They can't steal our acorns after each harvest. We have to decide to give them to them. They steal our intellectual property, they've got it forever.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, Bob.
You know, the president's stated reason was protecting intellectual property. And I agree, we should do that. Every time that I am in China, I say they've got to start respecting that, or they're going to have problems. And I get an opportunity to speak at colleges and universities over there. But here's the deal. It still hurts us. I talked to a high-tech company in Brea, in the district, and they do some specific technology, and the first thing that happened was China reverse engineered it, started putting out their own thing. And they kind of chuckled and said, the thing is, as soon as they made that, it was already obsolete, because the industry is always evolving. And unless they're coming up with those scientific papers and developing that technology, the intellectual property is still going to be here where it's being driven by our colleges and universities. And by the way, they're coming over here to get educated here because we have the technology. We are the driving force of biotech and high-tech throughout the world. Do we need to protect it? Yes, but not at the expense of everything else in our economy.
Thank you, Bob. So,
Young, you want to say something?
No,
Okay.
that's good. Okay, so we're going to move on to
A question
about the environment, and this comes from Noel from the community, and independent from Rowland Heights, asks, what is your stance on the environment and what you would do as a congressman around clean energy? And let's start this time with Young Kim.
Okay. Well, we do need to protect the environment, but we must strike the right balance between protecting the environment and making sure that our economy can grow. It needs to be, let's first talk about the climate change. Climate change is real, and I think humans contribute to it. But to find a solution, we need to find it that is market-based. So I believe that we must continue to invest in the research and development of the renewable energy, and I think we can begin to shift funding for research away from the more mature sectors like oil and invest more in the renewables. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Young. We'll go in order this time. We'll go with Shawn.
All right, so you are sitting in the building of the Air Quality Management District. Their job is to monitor the air quality. 89% of the entire problem that they're supposed to solve in this building, they have no jurisdiction over. Because the overwhelming reason that we are in non-attainment, meaning we're the most polluted air district in the United States, is largely because planes, trains, and automobiles. Diesel truck particulate, locomotives, ships. The number one thing the federal government can do is to help California, starting with helping convert diesel truck fleets, specifically coming out of that port that all come down this 60. Overwhelmingly, that traffic goes right through this district. We need to convert those trucks to natural gas, and the federal government doesn't need to force anybody across the nation, but at some point should start putting time requirements that if you're going to be a long-haul trucker coming into this area, you've at least got to transfer your stuff to a local big rig that burns natural gas. It's a domestic product, it's cheap, it's often renewable, and it would do wonders to clean our air here in the basin.
Thank you, Shawn. Bob?
We've come a long way over the last 30 years. We still have a long way to go, but I believe it does have to be market-based. Sometimes we've pushed up against that pretty hard. And we're up against a threshold right now where President Obama set the standards somewhere up for cafe standards for cars at like 53% or something up there. What that means is you'd have to virtually all be driving electric cars or hydrogen-fueled cars, and those are very expensive, because right now you get a Prius, you're getting about 40 miles per gallon. You might be able to get a little smaller, maybe get 50. They set it so high that you're going to have plug-in electric to comply. Well, that's expensive, and most people don't want them. So we have to find a way to make it market-based, make it supportable. But, you know, we're already paying a pretty high price, and we're somewhere around 33 to 40% renewable energy or in the pipeline to get that. The state of California has goals to up around 50%. They don't even know how they're going to supply the grid, how it's going to be stable. When it comes to, if you had all plug-in cars, how are you going to rewire the neighborhoods? I mean, it's going to be very expensive to do that. To have the infrastructure for everybody to plug in a Tesla or whatever that is at night. So it's very expensive. It's got to be market-based.
Thank you, Bob. And now we have a foreign policy question that actually impacts our domestic home very much. Question 3. Many Asian families are immigrants, some undocumented. Where do you stand on DACA and chain migration?
Let's start with
Bob Huff.
Yeah, with DACA, I think we have to do the humanitarian thing and take care of the kids. It was not their fault that they got pulled over by adults or whatever. We've got to deal with that in a compassionate way. And we also have to be able to figure and get some real immigration reform going forward, because that's what set up this problem in the first place. I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of the question. You had DACA and then...
Chain migration.
I'll repeat the...
I got it. No, chain migration. You know, I disagree with the way I heard it articulated from Trump. I do think that you need to... If somebody comes over, they need to be able to bring their parents with them. I mean, you don't want to separate families that way. I don't want to separate families, particularly among the Asian communities, because typically most Asians are taking care of their parents anyway. It's not the government taking responsibility, but allows the kids to benefit from the parents, their knowledge and all of that, the grandparents. But if you're going to define beyond brothers and sisters and cousins and whatever else, then there are boundaries that we need to rein in. But as far as just the concept of chain migration, parents have to be in it.
Thank you, Bob.
So Congress is a body that should have addressed DACA from the very beginning. And looks like they're tabling this off to the next session. That's why you need somebody like me to get to Congress. Someone who understands the immigrant story. Someone who understands why DACA fix is necessary. So I'll be there to find a solution that is humane, that doesn't penalize DACA beneficiaries, the children, for the decisions that their parents made. Our communities and our government invested so much to educate these DACA children by sending them to public schools. Where are they going to go? We've educated them. They need to stay here and become productive members of our community, and we need to find a humane solution to do that. I need to be there to be your voice, to find a common sense, workable solution to fix DACA once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Young. Before we move on, are there any counterpoints that anyone wants? Right.
Yeah, what are the counterpoints?
Sorry, Shawn.
Not at all. We've been up here. Thank you. So, why are we having this discussion? And again, direct questions deserve a direct answer. But in 1986, we had amnesty. Ronald Reagan passed amnesty. What happened? What's the best estimate range for the number of people in this country here illegally? 12 million? 15? DACA, I agree, these people got swept up. Children are not active participants. You're going to go where your parents send you. So clearly there has to be a solution. I think President Trump added 1 million people to the answer that President Obama was offering. I think it's shameful that the Republicans didn't get it done, but I don't think any solution even can hold the title of solution if it doesn't come with border security. And why are we having this discussion? Because we don't have border security. And for every one of you in this room that had to fight to immigrate legally, the pain of the idea that people get to break the law and get something that you fought so hard to get, we have to have rules and we have to follow them. We need reform that secures the border and mandates people come here legally. The DACA kids should have been dealt with this past spring. It's a shame that they haven't. And I think the president's proposal was very reasonable, and the Republicans should have done it without the Democrats if they weren't going to play ball.
Thank you, Shawn. Before we move on and pass this over to Mark for the final section,
Actually, any
for kids.
counterpoints there?
Are there any counterpoints?
No counterpoints, but let me just make a point of, I agree with what Shawn just said. 1986, when Ronald Reagan gave the massive amnesty, it was with the understanding that we will take care of that undocumented or illegal immigration situation once and for all, but we didn't. And we keep having this conversation 10 years, and then another 10 years, and another 10 years. So we need to fix the broken immigration system. However, we are partially responsible for having this discussion of DACA fix. That needs to be handled differently. So we need to take care of DACA in a separate manner, and then take care of the broken immigration system. So I just wanted to make that clarification, and I'll be there to make sure that that difference is made, and we take care of those who are here, and then we take care of the illegal immigration, so we don't have this conversation again.
So the Reagan amnesty has been cited. The reason that it didn't work on that immigration reform was they never secured the border. So we legalized those that were here, and then we didn't secure the border. So they continue to come on in because they say if we get in, you know, we're going to get granted amnesty. And so that became a huge problem. So I think any immigration reform has to start with securing the border. We do have to have comprehensive immigration reform. President Obama agreed to that. That was what he ran on. Of course, he couldn't do it even when he controlled both houses of Congress, or wouldn't do it, whichever it is. But, you know, maybe I'm missing something here, but I didn't hear either of my colleagues up here address the change my immigration issue. I did.
Well, chain immigration talks about when families immigrate to the United States, we come usually as a family, nuclear family unit. It is part of the American dream. So it's not about, when we talk about this issue, it's not about breaking up families. We need to make sure that the families are intact so they can realize the American dream together. This is why, if you look at the immigration code, there are different preferential categories. Families bringing their children, adult children, petitioning for their family members. So we have a different preferential categories. So we can talk about the visa quotas and all of that. I'm for family chain migration. We need to come here together, stay together, realize the American dreams together. Look for that opportunity that makes America great together. Thank you.
Shawn, you want to have a look?
You know, and I apologize, and Bob's correct. I just forgot, quite honestly. I got a lot going on, but, you know, I do believe, listen, for whatever reason, and Hugh Wynn is a good friend in the back who came, his migration situation was unique. He was pulled onto a U.S. helicopter and flown to the USS Midway and delivered to the shores of the U.S. That's a unique way of coming here, but not all his family made it at the same time, and he did. I think there has to be preference to your, you know, sort of, you know, intimate family, obviously. For whatever reason, if your family's broken up, someone wants to stay back in another country to finish their education, finish their job, and finally retire. But there needs to be limits. There are limits, and I think we need to set responsible cutoffs on where chain migration ends. The fact that you're related to someone, we're all probably related to each other in some way, shape, or form if you go back far enough in the human chain. Immediate family needs to be the limit.
Thank you, Shawn. So for our final section, we'll pass it to Mark.
All right, our final section is for the kids. All right, first of all, how do you guys feel about firearms and school safety in light of recent school shootings? And let's start off with,
Well, our children
Are the most valuable asset, and we need to protect them at all costs. And protecting them requires providing, securing the buildings with better physical security, and providing security officers or police officers on the premises, because it will serve as a deterrence factor. But I think the fundamental issue and discussion we need to have is that we have so many laws on the books, and they're not enforced. So we need to make sure that those gun laws are enforced. Another important issue that we need to discuss is the mental health issues, all right? The people that gets in the hands of the wrong people, oftentimes they are individuals with mental health issues. And I talked about this earlier. We have significant shortage of beds allocated to treat mental health patients. So we need to find a way to provide funding for the hospitals so that they can have more beds to treat mental health patients. And that will be one of the discussions we should have when we talk about gun laws, gun issues, security, and protecting our children in schools.
thank you so much, Shawn?
So interesting you tied the two together. Listen, there's a lot of talk about assault rifles, and we've got to ban them. Does everybody know that assault rifles are not legal in California? Assault rifles are machine guns. You haven't been able to own a machine gun in California that I'm aware of in my life. You're not even allowed to own a weapon that looks like a machine gun, right? I hope you know that, because a lot of people don't realize that. We should never have a shooting in a school. People go to schools, obviously because they are mentally ill and the devil incarnate, but they go to schools because they're non-secure locations and they don't think anyone's going to push back. The reality is this has to start. The latest Parkland shooting, you didn't just have some warning signs, you had people calling the FBI and actually telling the FBI, I think that guy is going to go out and shoot people. Clearly, we've got a lot of problems in this country, and they're not with schools or guns. They're with, what do we do with law enforcement when they are clearly tipped off? No recording, remember. They are clearly tipped off to a problem, and they don't do anything about it. People with mental health issues should not own guns. All of us know someone that should not own a gun. They shouldn't have the option of going on a shooting spree. And if law enforcement was taking these threats appropriately, we wouldn't have had Parkland. It was 100% predictable, because it was predictable.
When I was a kid, schools didn't have fences around them. You could wander into class any which direction you wanted. And somewhere along the line, we figured out that it put kids at risk because some adults would come on campus and abduct them. And so we put fences around schools. And we forced people to go in through some small gates, everything else is locked, and then they had to check into the office. But that does leave a ripe environment for, in the Florida case, a former student that looks like a student to slip into campus and to wreak havoc, because you now have a contained area where people can't get out. And so we have to do a better job, as we've done in the past. We recognize the issue now, and smart people can get together and solve this. But I think one solution is to be, I don't have a problem with arming teachers that are willing to do that. But you do it in a way like police training. We don't let police go out there and wear the badge unless they've gone through some rigorous training. They've been on the firing range under different situations. And we pay teachers now for bilingual education. We pay them for different certificates they have. And I don't see why we wouldn't pay them a stipend for being one of these people. And you secure the gun so it's not access to the students and stuff. But the reason they go onto campus and shoot is because they know nobody's going to be shooting back. You got to fight back.
Can I say something very, very quickly? It's currently, as you know, states are not required to enter information into the background check system. If we did, and if they were mandated, then we could have prevented. like the taxes sharing cases. So we need to make sure that we find one of the solutions leading that way. Once you do the background check, make sure those information is shared by mandating that to be entered into the background check system. And this would have really helped a lot too. So I just wanted to mention that. It's not a rebuttal, but I just wanted to let you know that states are not at the moment required.
All right, our next question actually comes from Rachel, a Democrat from Chino Hills, asked, in light of an LA Times article alerting the public to the higher ratio of administrators in offices versus professors in the classroom, what would the candidates do in regards to college affordability and student loans? Also, how do you solve the problem of schools not actually doing their job of training our kids to be workforce ready? Shawn?
So a couple things. I'm not sure the schools have to be held accountable for their administrators to teacher level. I think that just goes to bringing it down to a more local level. But the number one thing I think middle class families, and I'm one of, with 2 children in college and one about to get there, that could be done in this country that would transform affordability for college and millennials that are carrying incredible amounts of debt, is allow college tuition for at least your state university. So here would be UC. Another state it would be there, University of Oklahoma, etc. Allow payment of tuition, fees, and books to be tax deductible. And it should be tax deductible, in my opinion, by whoever pays it. If you have grandparents that want to look out for their student, let them deduct it. I don't care who pays it. What's not deductible, trips to Europe and things like that, no. If you want to go to a private school, I was fortunate enough to do, not sky's the limit. But if you get the state university as a cap, I think that it would change college affordability in this country. And as I'm sure many of you know, college affordability is becoming a major crisis for young people right now.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think, yes, we need to take care of our student loan crisis by doing a couple things, in my view. We need to make student loans more easier to refinance and maybe dischargeable in the case of bankruptcy. We need to also make sure Pell Grants are more accessible, and they need to be more flexible. We also need to make sure that colleges offer classes that are STEM related to prepare our younger generation to be workforce ready. I just came away with having meetings with the manufacturers and the business people that told me they're ready to hire about 20 people in their manufacturing firm, but they cannot because the people they're interviewing are not ready for the type of jobs that they're offering. So this goes to show you how important it is that we provide classes that will allow our students to be workforce ready. So those are some of the things that I have in mind, and hopefully you'll share my thoughts as well.
Great, thanks, Shawn. Bob?
I think we need to have a top to bottom evaluation of our education system, particularly when you get into high school and college, because our kids are not trained to the workforce. And we've sold them a bill of goods that if they just get a college degree, they're going to be successful in life. But it really comes with a work ethic that they don't teach you in school. The work ethic says that regardless of what your certificate is, you're going to go out there and make something happen. But you look at Germany, you look at Switzerland, you look at China, they have a very robust trade focus. We think that somehow we're tracking these kids if we teach them a trade. We're not going to let them be academic. Well, some kids don't want to do it, but we still force them into that. So they end up at college and they don't have, they have a degree, but they don't have any money, they got debt, and it hasn't really achieved that. To keep costs down, first of all, I think you have to address that. But I think we can have some market-based solutions to keep costs down. If you have a certain ratio of administrators that's down before a desired threshold, they get more grants. You give them something that we're currently giving them, but you dangle a little carrot out in front of them, and we can change the world if you give them the proper incentive.
Thank you. Anyone want to counterpoint? Shawn?
Yeah, so I think it's important to talk about, young kids. One of the reasons that college loans originally were not bankruptable is because if you were ever going to bankrupt, when would be the perfect time to do it? When you have no assets, you're very young, you don't have any money to pay it back, So the challenge was if they made them bankruptable, lenders wouldn't loan to students. And that's real. I mean, that's a market-based reality. The challenge is if you capped student loans at a certain level, perhaps, and then beyond that, and certainly for medical school, the level would be higher because the earning capacity and the number of years you have to be in school. But you have to be very careful. You can't ruin the system by allowing people to discharge it in bankruptcy, or you'd have a lot of people just purge the whole debt and start over, figuring, hey, in 7 years, I'm only going to be 28 anyway, so I'll just start developing credit. So you have to be real careful. There's also a reality of exponentially increasing college tuition, particularly at these private schools. And one of the reasons that the cost is going up so much is because, unfortunately, they're being given a lot of cheap money easily, and it's making prisoners of some of these young kids. So at some level, it would make sense to let an additional amount be bankruptable. They probably wouldn't loan it in the first place if that was the case, and that would actually provide a decent market solution to a real crisis of a lot of young people.
Any other comments? Okay, before we move to the closing statements, we did get two questions from the audience that's here that can please submit. The first one is, what legislation have you authored for the Asian community and separately for small business that you're most proud of? Let's start with Bob.
For the Asian community, there was a Heritage School Bill, which took the after-school programs that are basically tutoring centers. State was coming in and shutting them down. They saw it as illegal daycare. And it took 5 years, but it was a labor of love because, as I told social services, these kids don't need room for a nap, because that's what they're saying, because they're not sleeping. And they don't need to be outside exercising because they're not exercising. They're studying. But, you know, the state looks at things a little differently. So we got that done. I introduced, as was said before, an apology, formal apology from the state of California. We had a statement of regret before. And then there was also a resolution calling upon Congress to do the same thing. If you listen to these guys talk about Congress, they'll tell you they've already apologized. But they haven't. They've done a statement of regret. So if I go back to Washington, D.C., I will ask for as well a formal apology for the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. I fought the battle with 1726, although we didn't offer that. And I don't remember all the other things I've authored there. But it's a long history. You can all look at it. But I've certainly been there for the Asian community. Thanks.
So my experience for 17 years has been a city councilman and a county supervisor. I've actually never authorized any rule or law that I understood, at least, just favored only one group. I mean, that certainly wasn't the intent. Every policy effort I've been involved in has been because there was a problem that needed to be fixed, and who it helped was hopefully everyone, or certainly everyone in the group. So I can't say I've authorized any specific Asian-related legislation, and since I'm one of these people that thinks government wastes a ridiculous amount of time, and they do, with meaningless propositions and sort of, you know, like certificate giveaways. I've been the mayor and chairman of most of the boards I've sat on, and we don't do resolutions when I'm in charge. I go do them personally. I don't waste people's time with that stuff. As to business, greatest thing I did for small business when I was on the Orange County Board of Supervisors, and I know I have very limited time, is the county health department regulated breweries like they regulated restaurants. I was told that if we got out of their way, we would see a splurge of new entrepreneurs. We closed down, we got completely out of the business, and specifically Anaheim, California is now one of the main microbrew centers in California because we got out of regulating small business.
Yeah.
So I mentioned this earlier, but I was very proud carrying on the work at the activist level. Before I was elected to the assembly, I saw the needs of Asian American high achieving our students who are not getting into the colleges based on their own merit. I mean, they worked so hard to get into the colleges they want, and that they couldn't do that, which is why I was very proud with Senator Bob Hall working on the SCA 5 issues. But when I went to the assembly, I saw a need to make sure that other colleges and universities do not continue to practice the unfair admissions practices. That's why I introduced HR 17 on the assembly level, and we were able to work on those issues. The business side, I'm very proud to have introduced and worked on AIB2B that allows streamlining process for the small businesses without any, who does not have the resources to hire a full-time general counsel or HR people to track the legislations and find out what rules and regulations they need to, keep track of so that they can stay in compliance. I was able to work with the governor's office to establish a website. So when you go there and type in the keyword, only the new rules that pertain to your industry would come up, so you can stay in compliance. Very proud of that.
Perfect. And what is, the last question comes from Robert. What is your top political achievement that is going to help you most when you go to Congress? Let's start with Shawn.
When I ran for county supervisor back in 2010, it was a little bit different world. I was the first person in the state of California that got the individuals at the CalPERS pension fund to admit that their fund was unsustainable because of the choices that they had made. Now, today that's very popular. In fact, Jerry Brown ran on that. But when I was the first person to point that out, it was so unpopular that the unions bombarded me. They didn't want me around because I knew how to add and I was articulate. I got to Orange County, and Orange County has the lowest pension formula in the entire state, and our employees pay in the most. This state, this city, this agency, this county, everybody is going to get swallowed by this pension tsunami that's coming if we don't have further fixes. And the County of Orange's formula, for those who understand how these formulas work, 1.62 is your multiplier at 65, not at 55, not at 50. That is the only way this nation is going to be able to survive this pension crisis that is going to devastate municipal governments. You've already seen a few of the casualties, Detroit and others. They are not the last. I am an expert on this topic. It will be a major issue across the country.
In the state legislature, I was very proud to work in a bipartisan way to provide the funding for homelessness issue. It's not just LA, but Orange County, throughout the state of California, we are dealing with this issue. I had a legislation to ask for $25 million, but because I was a member of the minority party, I couldn't get it through. But I found a way to work it with my Democratic colleagues across the aisle. And at the end of the day, it was results-oriented, result that really brought some money to address the issue that I really cared about. I'm very proud of that. We needed to do that in a bipartisan way. But as a congressional staff for a long time in this area, I have foreign affairs policy. As a U.S. interparliamentary interlocutor, I was able to work on humanitarian issues, the human rights issues, the free trade agreement issues, the United States Korea free trade agreement that I was really engaged in passing that through. And again, working on the security issues. Look what's happening in the Korean Peninsula. What's happening in South and North Korea, and United States and North Korean leaders about to get together. This is a historic moment. It's not just something that only pertains to our Korean community. It's an issue that the world is watching. In this diverse environment, you need a representative who understands those issues. Not only the domestic issues, but at the foreign affairs policy issues. And I have that experience, and I believe I can be that voice when I get to Congress. That is what I'm proud of, and I think I can bring that experience to you guys. Thanks.
Bob?
Serving 9 years in the city council, 4 years in the state assembly, 8 years in the Senate, 4 of those as Senate Republican leader. I've learned how to follow, I've learned how to lead, and I can do all of that. But I've also learned how to build consensus on issues. And I found that if you stick people in the eye, they don't want to work with you. So I try not to stick them in the eye. I'm friendly, I'm agreeable. I can disagree with them 100% on policy, but we agree to disagree agreeably. To that point, I had a bill that benefited epileptic kids to have some medication given by non-professionals on campus. It was opposed by the California Teachers Association, and frankly, there's no stronger lobby in Sacramento than that. I got that through bipartisan support. It was painful, it was long, but it's because I built consensus. I didn't stick people in the eye, but it did something good for the kids. So I've also developed many relationships over the years back in Washington, D.C. I hope we stay in the majority. I have friends there. Kevin McCarthy was my leader when I was first elected to the state assembly. But If it's Democrats, I have a lot of relationship there too. You know, I won't stick them in the eye, but we work on problems together.
All right, now let's go to our closing statements. Let's start off with ladies first, Young.
Thank you once again for having us and having the opportunity to discuss our different views. Oftentimes, I think you found that it's not too far. We don't disagree on a lot of things, but we also learn how to work together. I am unique in a sense, as an Asian American, as an immigrant, I bring different perspective. Look, I was born and raised in South Korea. I came to California, but not before I spent time on the island of Guam and in Hawaii. And I had the opportunity to work with a member of the United States Congress. As the Asian Affairs Director, I had the opportunity to work on the federal and state and local issues all together. These are unique opportunities that I don't know if my other opponents or candidates, 17 field of us, could say that they have that unique perspective. I have that experience, and I am truly engaged in the community that I love so much, a community and the district that I know for so long. I want to continue to serve in the community the way I've been, staying engaged and bringing the voices of the community and reflecting them in the congressional process. With my election, I'm not only becoming the first Asian American Republican woman to serve in the United States Congress, growing the API caucus, but we're growing the voice that is so missing, because the half dozen of the API members of Congress are one-sided. My election will bring the other to truly make it a bipartisan caucus and bring the fiscally responsible voice and work on policies that help us, but oppose policies that would be harmful to the Asian American community. I want to thank you for listening to our different views or similar views, but I think you need a representative that could be the representative of the 39th Congressional District that understands such diversity, someone who have worked in the district, someone who have raised our family and live here. I would be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Bob?
Can I ask how many of you live in the 39th district? Raise your hand. So there's quite a number of you. I'm speaking to you guys now. I've been privileged to have been elected to the city council here at Diamond Bars. We talked about the state assembly and state senate. You've heard different perspectives from us on different issues. These are all thorny. But I will tell you, in the political arena, there's nothing that replaces experience, because it's a brutal arena. You are, particularly in a partisan environment like Sacramento. It was one thing in local government, but frankly, it was different. I would go to these regional things, and we would focus on an issue, and we just get it done. You weren't an R, you weren't a D, you just got it done. Somewhere along the line, it might take 3 or 4 years to figure out that guy's a Republican or that guy's a Democrat. But I worked in the nonpartisan and got things done. I worked in a partisan atmosphere and got things done. And I know I can do it in Washington, D.C. as well. There's a lot of challenges our nation is facing right now. We're very polarized. You're either in this camp or you're in that camp. Life is a lot more complicated than that. My philosophy has always been, what do we agree upon? I know what we disagree upon, but what do we agree upon, and what can we focus on, what can we get done? And that's the approach that I will take as I go back to Congress. You know what? When I was in Boy State in high school, I got an autograph of Ronald Reagan. He was the governor at the time, and that was an important thing to me. I treasured that, and it made me think higher of political people. I will give you a resolution. If you elect me, I think it's important, because you have a little piece of something that thought enough of you to give a resolution recognizing you or something you did or your business, and you hang it on your wall and proudly say, I know Congressman Bob Huff, and he knows me. I think that's an important connection, and I think it's important in our society, and I know it's important to the Asian culture, because I turned out a lot of commendations and resolutions when I was in the Assembly and the Senate. But thank you for listening to us tonight. I hope I've earned your trust, and I look for your vote. Election day is June 5th, unless you just got your sample ballot or your ballot in the mail, and you can vote right away. But mark Bob Huff. You might have to look for me. There's a lot of people there, but Bob Huff is the guy.
And finally, Shawn.
Well, I'd rather be lucky than good, and I was a trial lawyer for a long time, and I assure you that's a cute little saying, but there is no amount of good that overcomes just flat out getting lucky. So just go to your ballot, just check yes on the first name that you see, and just move on. We're good. I did get lucky. You know, I hope you understand, I was a trial lawyer, so intimidation is the wrong word, but I hope you know, you're coming up here tonight, and you've been fantastic hosts, you've been a great audience. You know, I came up to Diamond Bar. I was not running for Congress 120 days ago. I am a guy from Orange County that's been the supervisor because that's the area I served, that's where I was from, and I don't have a lot of roots in Diamond Bar. And I come to an Asian business group where Senator Huff's one of the sponsors, and, well, you may have noticed, Young is Asian. I'm neither. But I hope what you heard tonight, and the reason I'm here, is to connect with people. I hope what you heard, I understand the subject matter. Everybody's got their talent. When I'm asked questions, I'm not just stumbling for something that I do. I've been about solving problems and coming up with common sense solutions that even on the board at the AQMD, which when I got here, it was 11 Democrats to 2 Republicans. I learned to lose with dignity, but I've moved the needle not because I convinced anyone to change their philosophy. That wasn't my mission and I would have failed. But because I engaged people and helped them understand that often what they were trying to do could be done a better way. That's been my experience everywhere I've served, whether it's the Orange County Transit Authority, where I've been the chair, doing projects that we've never done in our history. MetroLink, that was on the verge of collapse until I ran it for 2 years, as largely just the individual leader. We had to go find brand new CEO. I have been at the forefront every place I've been, and I'm not going to go to Congress and disappear for 10 years like a lot of those people. I walk the halls, I wonder who they are. If I'm fortunate enough to win your vote, I'm going to make a difference starting day one.
Thank you so much, Bob, Shawn.